We're on? All right. Good morning and welcome to Java with Jerry. It is Wednesday, November 21. It is Thanksgiving Eve. So happy Thanksgiving to all of you who are making your plans and those of you who are watching from wherever you are or listening as you're exercising. We're glad to have you here with us or listening to us at Java with Jerry. So on this Thanksgiving Eve, we're going to do a little bit of news, national, local, and state, as always. And we're going to do our feature of the day, the millennial word. And we have a special one that goes with the theme of Thanksgiving. And actually, we have a couple of them that go with the theme of Thanksgiving. We'll talk a little bit about that. And we will talk a little bit about the election in the context of some of these news stories because it's part of the national story. Still undetermined in a lot of places, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's the case. We hope you're planning to have a great Thanksgiving vacation. When you are done and you come back, we will be back, as always, on Java with Jerry, and we will catch up with you on the news then. All right, let's get started because there's a lot to talk about. I've, of course, overwritten the show as I always do. Two national stories because one isn't enough. After all, this is the holiday of gluttony, so let's be a glutton for news as well. And we will talk about two national stories. The midterm election, which I promise you we talked a little bit about last week because it still hadn't been determined. Still in some places not determined. And I want to talk a little bit about the president, the caravan, and this whole issue of what's going on our southern border, which is becoming more and more tense. So as you all know, November 6th was election day. It was probably one of the most consequential election days we've had in a long time in the midterms. Enormous amount of voting all over the country. Here in Orange County, I think we're pushing 72%, 71 and change, which is a big turnout because in recent midterm elections, they've been averaging between 45 to 55%. So you can see the enormous interest. We talked last week about the fact that on the national level in the Senate, it looks like the Republicans picked up seats. Well, now we have settled it down to 52 seats for Republicans, 47 for Democrats / independents, because there's a couple of independents that caucus with the Democrats in there. So 52-47 with one more seat yet to be determined in Mississippi, which will be determined in a runoff next week, next Tuesday, the 27th. There'll be a runoff between the Republican and Democrat, who are the top vote getters, and that's a winner-take-all runoff, so we will soon determine. It seems likely based on the demographics there in Mississippi and also based on what happened in the election, because one of the Republicans in the primary, it's a jungle primary, has dropped out. Those Republican votes will likely go to the Republican candidates, so the Republicans may hang on to that seat and end up with a net 53 seats in the Senate, which is an improvement for Republicans in that House. It's clear, however, that the Republicans have lost the House. I think there's somewhere around 234 seats for Democrats now. You need 218 for a majority, obviously, so they're about 16 plus, and there's still a couple of seats yet to be determined, including one in Central California that is yet undetermined that may flip blue. And that would make 7 seats that flipped from Republican to Democrat in the column in California, 6 of them in the Orange County region, which was devastating in Orange County to Republicans. If you stop and think about it, in Orange County there are either 6 seats wholly contained in Orange County or that touch a portion of Orange County, include other neighboring counties. And in each one of them now, a Democrat holds a seat over Republicans, which was a complete flip. Now that's astonishing because that's the first time since way back to the Great Depression, I think, that you had a time when Republicans didn't dominate the seats in Congress in Orange County. Pardon me, and the devastation for the Republicans in Orange County didn't end there. They lost legislative seats. In fact, across the state, Republicans lost legislative seats. How bad? Well, let me explain. If you are in the Senate on the red carpet in Sacramento, there are 40 seats available for senators. At this point, and it looks like because Janet Wynn may lose her seat to Tom Umberg in western and central Orange County, that means there will only be 9 Republican senators out of the 40. 9 out of 40. In the lower house, in the assembly, where there are 80 seats available on the assembly floor, only 19 of the 80, 19 will be 3 Republican seats. That's 25%. Obviously, in both houses, below the 1/3 requirement to be able to be blocking legislation that is a tax legislation or a change in rules or any of the things that the houses may want to do to block a veto of the governor. They no longer require any Republican votes to do those things. So it was a pretty devastating midterm election for Republicans. Now, there are a million different recriminations for why that is the case, and so I wanted to pick up a piece that was written by Joel Fox, who's a editor and co-publisher of Fox and Hounds, which is a daily political blog, sort of center-right. Let's talk a little bit about what he has to say in an article he wrote on November 19th. You can go find it on Fox and Hounds and read the entirety. I'm only going to take excerpts out of it, written that Monday the 19th by Joel, where he says it's the fall of the state GOP, and he recounts that the California Republican Party wipeout was complete from the defeat of Trumpian hardliners like Congressman Dana Rohrabacher in coastal Orange County, to Republicans who can work across the aisle like Assemblywoman Catherine Baker. They're all gone. Many obituaries for the party have been written by all kinds of people. The brand is so severely tarnished, says Joel Fox, that if Santa Claus ran with an R behind his name, he couldn't win in California. Former Republican Assembly leader and currently the supervisor in Stanislaus County, Kristen Olson, wrote a piece in Cal Matters in which she declared that the Republican Party was not salvageable, and she said the brand was a toxic brand of Republican politics that needed to be completely replaced. In a Washington Examiner opinion piece, former California GOP chair and the California committeeman for the Republican National Committee, Sean Steele, wrote an opposite opinion piece saying that President Trump was not the entire problem for the state party. He gave credit to the Democrats' superior ground game, their mobilization and grassroots efforts, and a result of millions of dollars raised by Democrats to support their efforts in the election. The shortage of GOP funds he traced down to the fact that Republican donors believe that the Republicans have little chance of success in California and are unwilling to make an investment. And that attitude can only be magnified in coming elections now that the Republicans have been as devastated as they have. The truth is, there's probably truth in both positions, as Fox points out in his piece. Escaping the clutches of Trumpian politics, the need for civil discord, and the refashioning of the basic issues with which the party should talk, including infrastructure, there is a lot of things to be done, and maybe donors will come back if the party changes its views and gets rid of its internal struggle over what it means to be a Republican. It seems that the chance for Republicans in the short term is to really get help from the Democrats. And what does he mean by that? And that's that now that Democrats have unfettered, complete control of the legislature, they can do all kinds of things. They can raise your taxes, they can change regulations, they can overturn a governor's veto should Newsom ever be inclined to veto anything that the legislature does, but they have ironclad control. So the leftist tendencies of the party to give away things, to be spendthrifts and the like, is completely unfettered by Republican tampering. There won't be any tamping down of their indications that they really want to do a lot of things that are sort of socialist in flavor and tone. If that's the case and they do that and it becomes much worse economically here in California, the bleeding will continue with regard to producers. People will feel the pain. They're certainly going to feel it at the pump now that they've refused to overturn the gas tax. And so the notion is that if they go to too far an extreme, that there could be a pendulum swing back. I don't know. You can look at it any way you want to. The midterms were scary, and what happens in 2020 will be very telling. All right, let's flip gears for a moment, talk about another national story that also has, frankly, a lot of state implications in California. My other national story involves the degree to which President Trump gets engaged in things like immigration on the southern border. And ironically, it also involves the state of California because it's a sanctuary state and increases the tensions between the president and the state, notwithstanding the fact that the president has done some outreach in California recently, coming to talk to people in the areas that were devastated by the fires and promising both former Governor Brown and Governor-elect Newsom that he would be here to help. And that's an important thing for us. The story really that's capturing the national news, however, on our southern border is about the immigrant caravan coming from Central American countries, principally El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Those are countries that are just devastated economically, and people are escaping. Those countries are also not only devastated economically, but they're dominated by drug cartels, and they're inhospitable places to live, to be sure. So these migrants have made their way, crashing the gates into Mexico, through Mexico, sometimes with aid from the Mexicans, who are trying to help them along and trying to be humanitarian to them along the way. And there are stories, all kinds of stories of the varieties of people that are in this caravan. They are not homogeneous. Don't think of them only as families with women and children. In fact, 95% of them seem to be dominated by young working age men, actually men between 18 and 25 largely, some of whom, not all, are unsavory characters. I guess they have noted, and I guess we've got people planted in the caravan that are gathering intel for DHS, that there are as many as 500 criminals in there, and they've been committing crimes along the way. They've been migrating through Mexico. So the poor Mexicans get overrun with Central Americans who are committing crime in their areas, and then they're being greeted with inhospitable feelings from the migrants. Excuse me. Let me have a little Java. Apparently the migrants who were being fed by the Mexicans who were coming out trying to help them were being mean-spirited to those who were trying to help them. There was apparently some video of a woman who is from Honduras who refused to eat beans and tortillas that were provided to her by some of the locals in the town where she was going through. She called it pig food and said she wanted them to give her money so she could order a pizza. Now, that is a feeling of entitlement from Honduras that I've never heard before. You're coming through someone's country, they're trying to feed you, and you instead demand your food of choice. So, not only that, there's reports, unsubstantiated at this point, from what I can gather, that some of the people who have already reached the fence are throwing rocks and bottles, some of the bottles filled with urine, at our soldiers and our border agents, and who knows if that is really true, but it's a mixed bag of people coming up to the southern border. So President Trump says, look, if you're coming here and you're seeking asylum, which is a very tough thing to seek because you have to really establish that you're being oppressed by the government, not that you're just trying to escape economic depravity. There's economic depravity all over the world. In fact, there's 7 billion people around the world. I suspect 5 billion of them would like to emigrate to America because obviously we're the beacon of freedom and we have a lot of opportunity here. Economic plight is not going to get you in the door. Asylum means that you're really in fear for your life. So if you're going to do that, says the president, come through our ports of entry, apply correctly, seek asylum, and we'll process your claim. Well, some of the migrants are doing that. I think there are several hundred who have been processed already through ports of entry in Tijuana and San Ysidro and other places along the border in Texas and Arizona. But there are also people who are just sort of crashing the gates anywhere they can. And the president went and said, look, I've got a new policy. You crash the gates anywhere, you're not entitled to asylum. You're only entitled to asylum if you come through a port of entry. So what happens? The ACLU, God love them to death, says we're going to take that to court. You can't do that no matter how they get here, by hook, by crook, over a fence through the middle of the desert, sneaking through a tunnel. We don't care how. If they say, hey, I want asylum, you're going to have to process them because that's what the current state of the law is. Is Congress working on that state of the law? No. So the president does this by executive order and they challenge it in court. And of course, they find a judge, a Ninth Circuit judge. Why is it always the Ninth Circuit, right? Which is sometimes called the Ninth Circus. Federal judge barred Trump administration Monday from refusing asylum to immigrants who cross the southern border illegally, rather than through the ports of entry, in other words. U.S. District Judge John S. Tigger issued a temporary restraining order after hearing arguments in San Francisco, of course. The request was made by the American Civil Liberties Union and the Center for Constitutional Rights, which quickly sued President Donald Trump after he issued his ban this month in response to caravans of migrants who have started to arrive at the U.S.-Mexican border. By the way, the Mexicans are at first generous and now just sort of frustrated. So you see a lot of them protesting, asking these migrants, go back to Honduras. Look, we're trying to help you. You don't want to go through the ports of entry. You don't want to work with Mexican authorities or American authorities. Get out of here. So it's causing tension south of the border in Mexico, and for good reason, as you can imagine. Individuals are entitled to asylum, they say, if they cross between the ports of entries. It couldn't be clearer, says the Center for Constitutional Rights. In recent years, thousands of immigrants every year have shown up in the Arizona desert north of the Rio Grande in Texas and in other places, and the Department of Homeland Security estimates that 70,000 people a year claim asylum between official ports. 70,000, not coming through the ports, just claiming asylum. And if you're from, the way the law works in America is if you're from Central America, not if you're from Mexico. If you're a Mexican coming here claiming asylum, we don't respect that. We go, no, you go back home. But if you're from Central America and you make it through Mexico and claim asylum, we have to take you in. Don't ask me why that rule works that way. We don't treat our Mexican neighbors the same way we treat Central Americans. So the Central Americans can get here and say, I claim asylum, and we have to let them in. We take their name, we give them a court date, they disappear into our population. They become part of the 22 million undocumented people we've got all over the United States, and they end up at some point or another getting married, having children. Once they have a child here in America, now you can't deport them at all, and the Central Americans get treated differently than everybody else everywhere in the country. So it's a huge tangled problem that needs to be untangled. How, you say, would it be untangled? Well, if Congress would do its job, if the 535 people we elected would sit down and come up with an immigration policy and new set of laws that deal with the issues that we're dealing with, then the presidents wouldn't have to act sua sponte. And by the way, Trump isn't the only president that acted on his own. So did Obama. He's the one that put up all the chain link fence containers that you see all the families in, which seem to offend the mainstream media. He had to do something because of the onslaught at the border. And by the way, it's not just the migrants coming in this caravan of 10,000 people. We have thousands of people a month, thousands coming across our borders or flying into our ports and overstaying their visas. It's a complicated problem. Anyway, it's certainly one that will become exacerbated with the Ninth Circuit now blocking that ruling by the president. You know that's going to wend its way to the Supreme Court, which has been reshaped by some of Trump's appointments. And so that'll be an interesting story to follow on the legal front. You'll also have a ton of implications here in California because the migrants don't really want to be in Arizona and Texas. They want to come to California because we're a sanctuary state, because we're inordinately generous with our welfare and with our support for illegal migrants. The interesting juxtaposition of recent stories is there are American citizens who were burned out in the fires in Northern California. They're living in tents in a Walmart parking lot, and now they're suffering the norovirus. And the state of California is spending zippity-doo-dah trying to house them and get them medical care. But there are a bunch of Central American migrants who have crashed the gates through Mexico, abused the Mexican citizens, now are coming in to the United States, and we're putting them up. We've got facilities for them. We're feeding them. We're providing them a roof and medical care. Huh? We don't want to take care of Californians who have been burned out, but we're taking care of Hondurans who are just trying to escape a bad situation. In any event, all of it is causing Californians to tear their hair out. As an ancillary story, my state story, which sort of dovetails with a local story. So I've got national stories that are overlapping state stories. Now how about a state story that overlaps a national one? Carl's Jr. has announced that it's closing its parent company's Anaheim office and ending a California legacy. This also came out November 19th. The parent company of Carl's Jr. says it will be closing its Anaheim office and moving those operations to Franklin, Tennessee. Now, that's really astonishing when you think about the fact that Carl Karcher and his wife began their company in the 1940s on a hot dog cart in Los Angeles. It's a actually California native company that is now going to be housed in Franklin, Tennessee. That's how inhospitable California has become to business. CKE Restaurant Holdings didn't say when the move will take place, but an employee at the facility said all personnel will be gone by early January, meaning it's imminent. A lot of those jobs are being outsourced that were in Anaheim to India and the Philippines. CKE, which also owns Hardee's, Green Burrito, and Red Burrito restaurant brands, moved its Carpinteria headquarters to Franklin last year, blaming high taxes and a stringent business climate, factors that have driven hundreds of other companies. Actually, 1,700 other companies have left since 2008. Get that again, 10 years ago. Starting in 2008, companies started bolting from California. That's up to 1,700 companies, and now including Carl's Jr. that was founded here. The move was also tied to the restaurant chain's success at franchising. Company-owned locations are no longer in prevalence. About 90% of CKE restaurants are now franchise-owned, and so they can work remotely as a franchisor anywhere in a more friendly business climate. CKE officials said the Anaheim location no longer fits its company business strategy. Wonderful. While maintaining multiple corporate offices had made sense in the past, working from a single location is critical to handling the culture we need to propel our business forward, said a CKE spokesman. With that in mind, we've undertaken the difficult task of closing our Anaheim office and moving its roles and functions to Franklin. and also to the Philippines and India. The Anaheim office employee who chose to remain anonymous in fear of jeopardizing his generous severance package said the staff at the 3-story, 93,000 square foot building at 1325 North Anaheim Boulevard will be whittled down from the 60 it currently has, which was whittled down from 275 employees last year. So the move has already been underway. Most of the people working in Anaheim have been there more than 10 years. 90% of those jobs are being outsourced to India and the Philippines. The other 10% will go either to a help desk in Mexico or are moving back to Tennessee. All the jobs will be gone by January 4th, he said. The Anaheim office houses a variety of business operations, including accounting, finance, payroll, real estate, development, facility maintenance, IT, and construction. So just a little history about the company. Carl Karcher moved his hot dog cart business from Los Angeles to Anaheim in 1945, where he opened a full-service restaurant called Carl's Drive-In Barbecue. He added hamburgers to the menu later that year and opened his first Carl's Jr. in 1956 in Anaheim. Come January 4th, nothing will be left in Anaheim. Carl was an icon in our city, and while we've seen the company's presence pull back from where it was in the early years, we'll always look back fondly at the role he played here, said city spokesman Mike Leister. Well, they can look back fondly, but they won't be looking at them being here. Most of the company's memorabilia from the Anaheim office will be moved to the Museum and Cultural Center, in Anaheim. So we'll have the memorabilia, but not the headquarters. That's a story related to the fact that California has been driving business out while it's been importing poverty. So there you go. There's your national, state, and local stories. Not exactly something to be thankful for. Here is something to be thankful for. I've got some uplifting stories to end our session with you together on Thanksgiving Eve, and maybe these will be things we can be more thankful for. I'm very thankful about the fact that last Saturday the UCLA Bruins met the USC Trojans in the Rose Bowl for the city championship, the annual fight for the Victory Bell. And yes, the Bruins came out victorious. We defeated the Trojans 34-27. Sorry, Trojan fans. It was a fabulous victory. It was a fun game to see. Now the Victory Bell is back in our hands. I'm sure we put a fresh coat of blue paint on it to get rid of the ugly red it's been wearing for the last few years. Congratulations to Bruins everywhere, and to all my Bruin friends and family, and to all my Trojan friends. You can now start buying me cocktails for the next year because you owe me. All right, there's a happy story. I'm happy to share that one. Here's another happy sports story. Last night, the Anaheim City Council agreed to a deal to extend the agreement with the Anaheim Ducks for another 25 years. This is the 25th year that they've been here in 2018, and they've just signed another 25-year deal, which includes having them manage the Arctic train station and its parking lot, and giving them some development rights to the land around Honda Center. So we're excited to hear that the Ducks will be here for 25 years more. They'll celebrate their 50th anniversary before we have to revisit whether they stay, and so that's good news. On another sports-related story out of the Anaheim City Council, on the other hand, Mayor Tate managed to get his majority to agree to go do an appraisal of Anaheim Stadium just outside my window, but it's to be an appraisal of the stadium without the burdens of the parking lot of the stadium being there. It's so that he can bias negotiations going forward. That'll probably get quickly corrected once the new council is seated on December 4th. But in any event, there's a couple of happy news stories. The UCLA Bruins are winners. The Ducks are staying, and so that's all good news. Here's another good news story in weather, at least for Southern California. We're going to get a little rain. It's supposed to come in later this evening, and sort of drizzly light rain through about midday on Thanksgiving, and then clear up by the time we get to dinner time, and then get sunny as always on Friday, and you'll have a nice sunny Thanksgiving weekend. So you'll have some good weather to come. We can get a little sprinkling of rain, which is a good thing. I worry about the burn areas up north. I hope they don't get too much rain. They're supposed to get much more than we are, but I hope it's not so much that we get mudslides in areas that have already been devastated by the fires up there. So keep them in your mind and in your prayers as you head into Thanksgiving. So I think we're going to get something like 0.2 of an inch, they say. That's not too bad down here, but we'll be delighted to get a little change in the weather, especially around Thanksgiving. All right, I asked my Cracker Jack staff to come up with a millennial word for you boomers. So this is time for now our millennial word of the day. This is for you boomers to use at Thanksgiving. And they came up with a couple of concepts. One is treat yourself, which is what you will do at Thanksgiving. I don't think you need to be told. You'll all do it. It's, as I said, a holiday for gluttony. I will certainly overeat because my wife overcooks, and so you'll all be treating yourself, except those who are really conscious of what they look like. They'll be very, very cautious as they eat, and they will probably run to the gym because they want to get snatched. What does that mean? That means if you watch what you do in calorie intake and you get to the gym and you do some heavy exercise, maybe you lift some weights, you do some time on the treadmill or on the rowing machine, you can get your bod looking hot, and that will mean that you'll be on fleek or snatched. So there's your millennial words. You ladies get on fleek, you guys work on that waistline and get snatched. All of you have a great Thanksgiving holiday. We will see you back here next Wednesday. Maybe by then we'll have some final election results, and maybe we'll have some good news instead of all this sadness that we've had around us with the fires and with the tension in our elections. In the meantime, enjoy your Thanksgiving. Have a good one. Have fun with your families. Enjoy lots of football and turkey. Remember to get snatched, those of you that are running to the gym, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday for more Java with Jerry. Happy Thanksgiving, Java with Jerry fans.